Welcome to our discussion on the evolving dynamics in the Caucasus, focused on the interplay between Georgia and Armenia, as explored in a recent in-depth video.
Yeah, it's a really complex mix of history, politics, and current events, right?
Absolutely, it's like these drums of war beat on both sides, with tensions nearly reaching a tipping point. The discussion explicitly touches upon how Armenia's recent crackdown on opposition forces is intensifying internal pressures.
Right, and I find it interesting because that internal dynamic plays into the broader regional conflict. It's not just about domestic politics, but also the external pressures like, say, the EU's renewed influence on Georgia.
Exactly, and there's this fascinating angle on how the EU has been pressing Georgia for reforms and stability. It's
Yep,
almost as if Georgia is trying to balance its Western aspirations while navigating its historical ties and pressures from its neighbors.
and let's not forget the point about Azerbaijan. The video digs into how Azerbaijan's posture toward Russia seems a bit antagonistic, right?
Yes, indeed. The analysis shows that Azerbaijan is positioning itself in a way that's both critical and opportunistic relative to Russia. Some argue that's a savvy move, while others see it as dangerously provocative.
I've got to ask, don't you think that labeling Azerbaijan's strategy as simply antagonistic might be a bit one-dimensional?
That's a fair point. It might be oversimplified. The video highlights a layered approach. Azerbaijan is leveraging its regional interests and historical rivalries, possibly to gain strategic leverage over Russia, which already has a complicated legacy in the region.
Right. So it's a mix of historical grievance and modern political strategy then?
Absolutely. And what's really striking is how these developments in Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan are interconnected. For instance, as Armenia tightens its grip on dissent, it also has to contend with external perceptions and pressures that shape its international relations.
And on the other side, Georgia's position is precarious, under EU scrutiny while trying to assert its own agency in the Caucasus.
Right, it's like a balancing act where every move can potentially tip the scales. In Georgia's case, external pressures from the EU serve as both a source of support and a challenge to its autonomy and decision making.
Yeah. I'm thinking about how these dynamics compare to historical conflicts in the region. The legacy of conflicts, territorial disputes, it all seems to converge in the present moment.
Yeah, exactly. History casts a long shadow here. This video doesn't shy away from the fact that old wounds and long standing narratives still heavily influence current policies in both Armenia and Georgia, and by extension, Azerbaijan as well.
Absolutely. And interestingly, there's also a point about the roles of key individuals, the historian from Armenia and the international relations analyst from Georgia. Their perspectives provide depth by grounding these geopolitical shifts in both historical context and current realities.
Yes, the voices of Pietro Shakarian and Lasha Kasradze are central. Their backgrounds, coming from respectively Armenia and Georgia, add this layer of first-hand insight, which really separates their analysis from generic commentary.
But wouldn't you say that their standpoints might be subject to bias given their personal national histories?
That's a valid critique and one the video subtly addresses. Both experts acknowledge their own biases while striving for an objective overview of the regional turmoil. They even debate internally, respectfully, on whether certain actions are defensive or aggressive moves.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost like you have two sides of a coin, a historical narrative and a pragmatic political one.
Exactly, and that's what makes the conversation so rich. They discuss how, for example, one nation's domestic crackdown could be perceived as a means of solidifying power, even as it inadvertently plays into the broader geopolitical tension in the region.
And if we look at it, the video also touches on how international pressure, particularly from entities like the EU, might be double-edged, a supportive nudge on one hand, but also a reminder of external expectations and limitations.
Right. It's like Georgia is caught in a tug of war. On one side, it wants to show resolve by reinforcing its national policies, and on the other, to align with Western frameworks for the sake of economic and political support.
Yeah. I find that particularly fascinating because it shows how modern nation-states are negotiating identity in an age where historical narratives are still very potent.
Exactly, and the interplay of nationalism, historical memory, and international diplomacy is a prime example of that. It's much like walking a tightrope. Each decision can lead to unexpected outcomes.
And what about the underlying current of military preparedness or brinkmanship that the title Drums of War evokes? There's a palpable tension where military posturing might escalate into open conflict.
Yes, that metaphor of the drum is quite powerful. It implies an impending call to arms, almost like a heartbeat that could either synchronize into unity or discord into conflict. The experts note that this tension is compounded by long standing territorial disputes and the recent strategic moves by regional powers.
Right. It's really a reminder that in such volatile regions, every diplomatic or internal decision can have far reaching military implications.
Exactly, and that's where prudence and diplomatic skill become critical. There's an undercurrent of caution in their dialogue. Everyone seems aware that the stakes are not only political, but could also, under different circumstances, spiral into military conflict.
There's also this element of external big players like Russia, which you mentioned earlier regarding Azerbaijan's stance, which really adds layers to the conflict.
Precisely. Russia remains a central figure in these calculations. Azerbaijan's policy, as highlighted, isn't taking place in a vacuum. It's part of a broader power struggle where Russia's influence is both contested and, paradoxically, sometimes sought after.
Yeah. And that duality creates a scenario where the smaller regional players are both leveraging and resisting Russian influence simultaneously.
Exactly, and it's that double edged nature of influence that makes the region so unpredictable. One misstep, and you could see an entirely different dynamic emerge, which is what makes these discussions so urgent.
I'd also add that the video hints at how these developments could reshape alliances and, set new precedents for regional security arrangements.
Absolutely. Every move by Armenia, Georgia, or Azerbaijan could signal shifts in alliances and possibly lead to a redefinition of what neutrality or alignment means in this context. It's almost like watching history in the making, where today's policies become tomorrow's textbooks.
Right, exactly. What's striking is the blend of academic perspective with real time geopolitical analysis. The historians and policy analysts are not just reciting facts, they're interpreting signals from a very dynamic environment.
Yes, indeed. And that interpretation is critical. They underscore that while historical narratives provide context, current economic, political, and military signals are what truly indicate the direction in which the region is heading.
It's a vivid illustration of how international relations can pivot on a combination of legacy and immediate strategy.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that, in the end, these developments affect real people, regional stability, and the broader balance of power in a part of the world that has been contested for centuries.
Absolutely. So, wrapping up, it seems that the video serves not just as a report on recent events, but as an invitation to reflect on the nuanced and often precarious balance of history, ideology, and modern geopolitical maneuvering in the Caucasus.
Yes, it's a rich tapestry of issues: internal politics, international pressures, and the ever present shadow of military brinkmanship. It definitely leaves you, thinking about how the past informs the present and what might come next.
And that's what makes the analysis so compelling. There's always more beneath the surface than meets the eye.
Exactly. Thanks for this engaging dive in these intricate dynamics. It's been a lively conversation on a topic that remains both timeless and critically urgent.
Absolutely. Thanks for the insights. Until next time.